And I look here, not here. Into
Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS. My guest, the gentleman next to me, is Richard S. David. Richard Samir David is a Democratic candidate for New York City Council for Rochdale Village, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and South Jamaica, District 28. Richard, inspired by President Barack Obama, President Barack Obama's call to action in 2008, became a community activist and a mentor to boys and girls of color. Richard was born in Guyana and moved to Southeast Queens at age 10. Richard, welcome to CWS.
I'm so glad to be here. How's everybody tonight?
Richard, I want to start by asking you, when those who are close to you describe you, what is usually accurate about how they describe you?
Short. Short and sweet. No, my friends actually have a lot of fun when they describe me, and so they like to poke fun at me. But people who know me actually say the same things consistently. I'm caring, and I'm compassionate. That's what it takes to be an elected official, because you have to care about people, and that should be the motivating force. And I'm happy that the people who know me really well know that I care and I'm compassionate.
One of the things that the person who introduced us, Tantrin Clark, said about you, this is this young Guyanese man, and she's very proud of you. Well, we're all proud of you. You're a son of the soil, and I'm glad to have you here tonight. That you were born in Guyana. You came at the age of 10. I usually ask people to take us back in time and give us a glimpse of their life at ages 9 and 15. And so this is good. 9 would be about a year before you got here. So what was life growing up for you at age 9, and then fast forward after that to age 15?
Yeah, at 9 years old, so my parents had already been in the United States, and I was living with my grandmother, my brothers, and I. And we were on a small farming village in Mycone. If anybody knows Dundee, that's a small village in Mycone. And we were raising livestock, so we had cows and sheep and goat and chickens and all the bunch of animals that we were not allowed to eat because we were vegetarian. But we were raising this livestock. And at 9 years old, my biggest worry was preparing to take common entrance in Guyana. Oh my God, I was stressed out. Every night, you study and you study and you study and you go to bed really late and you wake up early the next morning. The best thing that happened to me is that I came here a week or two before I took common entrance. And so I escaped that really. I thought it was traumatizing. I didn't want to take it, and so not only was I coming here to see my parents and coming to this place I had heard so much about, but for me the reality is I didn't have to take common entrance exam.
So what happened at age 15? What was that like for you?
At 15, I'm in New York. I'm living with my dad. So my parents had separated, and we lived with my dad, my brother, and I on Jamaica Avenue in Queens. And I was in high school, and you go through all kinds of hormones. You're dating these sort of fluid relationships at that age. And I was always, while I was having a lot of fun in my personal life and I had incredible friends, I was also really involved in mock trial. I was kind of a nerd, but I was also, I think I was pretty popular. And I was just really involved in, March of Dimes, and the Special Olympics had come to New York, and they were at St. John's University, and that's something I had volunteered in when I was 15. One of the things I will never forget, though, is that I was picked to be an ambassador of the United States, funny enough, because I had still, been recently living in the country, to represent this country in Germany. And all expense paid 2-week trip to Germany to represent our country. That was an incredible experience.
What was that experience like for you? I mean, what exactly did they expect of you?
Yeah, so they called it the Bridge to Berlin program. And at the time, they wanted New Yorkers who had experienced 9/11 and who had experienced a lot of really traumatizing events that occurred in the city. If you look like me, very often you were targeted thinking you're a terrorist or something else. And so this Bridge to Berlin program wanted to create a closer partnership between people who they thought were going to be the future leaders of the United States, and in New York City, they wanted us to have a better understanding of Germany. And at the time, Germany, the EU was just coming about. They knew that they were going to be at the center of Europe, and they wanted a closer partnership between these two leading cities and these two leading countries. And they wanted to be firmly implanted into the minds of young people who were going to lead their countries.
What was your takeaway from that experience?
Oh my gosh, an all-expense paid trip all around Germany? That's all I remember. No, it was great. We the German chancellor at the time was Gerhard Schroeder, and the foreign ministry paid for all of our expenses, and we got to party on the lawn of their foreign ministry. We went to the Bundestag, which is their parliament. We went to all the palaces in every single major city. We also went into their East Germany, which, even up until 2000, this is the part of Germany that was under Soviet control, not Soviet control, under communism. This is the part that's the least developed. And so there we stayed in hostels, and we really saw how people were still struggling, and how the divide that had been there for about 40 years, when the wall came down, it didn't just suddenly disappear, although this was one united country.
You mentioned being excited about coming to this place and finally reconnecting with your parents. And you and your brother living with your dad first and so on. I know you were also raised by your mom. What are some wonderful memories you have of your parents? Let's start with mom first.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to that.
It's funny because as a child growing up, my parents left when I was 6 years old, and I lived with my grandparents even when they were in Guyana. My parents would come and get me every weekend, but the school that I went to in Dundee was closest to my grandparents. And in Guyana, you have a pet. I was like my grandfather's pet grandchild, and so they didn't want me to go anywhere. And so I was kind of living with them. I don't have extensive memories of my parents during my childhood, but I do have this one. When my parents were leaving, and so my parents' house was in Zeskendron, on roadside, right? Not Mycony Creek, for the people out there that are listening and know what all those geographies mean. So we are roadside, and our house is there, and I'm a kid. My parents have packed up everything they owned into 1 or 2 suitcases. We were very poor, so 1 or 2 suitcases was everything we owned, and they were leaving. And my brother and I were cooking mud in a coconut shell under the step. And we didn't even get up to leave because and this is actually a fire. If you've ever cooked mud in a coconut shell, that's what kids do in Guyana for fun. We didn't even get up to say bye because we were like, all right, wave, let the minibus take them. And so my mom started crying, but we didn't really understand what all of this meant. And certainly for me, because, not really having them around all the time, because I was with my grandparents, this was an entirely new experience. But I remember cooking mud and just kind of like, leave me alone. I don't want to burn my, coconut shell because then it's going to spill everywhere. And that's I remember that distinctly.
When you got here, when you got here, or let me ask you this: if you were to eavesdrop your parents telling a stranger about you, what do you think? How do you think your father would describe you? And then, how do you think your mother would describe you?
My dad. So my dad now, he lives in Florida. He injured his back, so the warm weather is better for his health. But my dad calls me like every day, or a week doesn't go by where we don't talk. And then the reason why I create that setting is because I often get to hear what my dad's saying about me to our friends and his friends and family, because they're always like, hi daddy, meher this, meher that. So I'd often hear him say, he doesn't actually know, in detail what I do and what my day-to-day is, but he'll say, just by eat, by always out of his house, you run around, focus, do this, da da. But then he'll say that's my day-to-day when he catches me driving, or sometimes I'm cooking. But he'll also tell people that he remembers, I'm still really ambitious, that I work really hard, and he's always asking me for my business cards. And this is an odd thing that only my dad does, because I've actually, he's never actually gotten a business card from me, and I've been in the workforce now for about 14 years, and I've had a series of business cards, and he's always telling me, can I see your business card? And I haven't showed them to him. I think he's asking me for the business card because in some way I think this validates my success for him, and so I have to get on that. I have to mail it to him or something. But he's looking for a whole collection of these cards, and he won't let it go.
What would mom say about you?
My mom would say I have to get married. My mom would say that, hey, you want to keep it real, right? She'll say I have to get married. My mom will say that she wants me to eat more. She wants me to work less.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom will probably say, that I'm sweet, I'm thoughtful, and I always make time for my family.
What was her reaction in particular when she realized that you were running for city council?
I don't think it actually sunk in my mom's consciousness, because we talked about it. She's one of the first people I told about this. And look, I'm a really political person, right? And so let's be very clear about that. This didn't come as some shock to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 14 or 15 years old, I was this kid reading Guyana Chronicle and Stabroek News and all these papers, right? Because that's the only way I could access on AOL Guyana News. I was really concerned about what was happening in Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my mom drove me all the way to Washington, D.C. to meet the Guyana ambassador because we wanted to see what we can do for young kids growing up who are still passionate and interested in Guyana in the United States. And so we met Odin Ishmael. My mom's always been very supportive of my dreams and my aspirations. As a 14-year-old kid, forcing your mom to drive you all the way to Washington, D.C. from New York to meet the ambassador.
So on reflection, how do you think this came about, this intimacy with politics and this desire to help and to empower young people? What do you think was the trigger for that?
I wish I could, and maybe I just haven't reflected more, deeply enough. When I was growing up on that farm I described earlier, I wanted to be a veterinarian, right? That was my dream. I don't know when I decided I wanted to get into politics. I don't think I ever really made that conscious decision until very recently that I wanted to become an elected official. For a long time, even when I was a kid, I was an activist. Obama kind of made it popular, and he kind of gave us the right words to use when we're talking about being community organizers.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, though, a lot of people had been doing that, myself included, for a long time. We just didn't have the label, the terminology, and he made it okay to do those things. And that's why when, in your intro, when I talked about Obama being an inspiration and the struggles that he had and the success he's had, that being an inspiration for me, I didn't realize I wanted to get into elected office until I saw how bad the conditions were in my own neighborhood. And so how long am I going to be active? How long am I going to fight for all of these things that I've always championed without actually, and then still be on the sidelines, right? How long am I going to complain and tell other people that we need this, we need that, and I want to see these things fixed, when you realize, hey, if I think I can do it better, and if I think I have more experience and the qualifications to do it, and hopefully some people supporting me, why not me?
Mm-hmm. I really want to get to the genesis of this whole thing, and I hear you. You haven't reflected much on it. But do you remember what you were present to when you felt like, well, I see here you started working at 13. And
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. But when you start working in the community and doing things to empower people in the community, do you remember when you were present to at any given moment as a 14-year-old boy, you were thinking about empowering young people in Guyana, you were interested in the politics in Guyana because that's your passion. But do you remember any particular thing that inspired you? Did something happen? Did you read about something? And I know I'm trying to, so I'm really putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know if you've ever been present to what triggered you.
Growing up,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest political thing that ever happened to me that I can think about was actually in Guyana as a child. Remember, I was living with my grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's around election time in Guyana, and so this is what they called, the first free election that we would be witnessing, and this is what we're told, right? And so I lived in a farming village on a dam where people never closed their doors. People never shut their windows, and so door locks were not a thing. They were just, you didn't need them. Someone was always home, and even if someone isn't home, nobody's coming into your house because you have all these neighbors watching, right? On election night, though, something different happened. All the men in the village decided they were going to take pitchforks and axes and whatever farming tools we had and form vigilante groups to protect the village. And they went up on the roadside and disappeared, and they created shifts. The women and children who were left at home, that's us, had to close the doors and the windows and protect the house from intruders potentially coming in. I tell you that part, and I focus so much on the house because we realized that actually we didn't have a key to that door. When they took out the key, it was this big thing that no one had ever looked at. It was rusted. We had never had a need to lock the door. We had not had any need to put wood across the windows like we did that night. And and then I remember him telling us these stories. If anyone comes in to this house, act like you're dead. Pretend you're not alive, pretend you're sleeping. Do not look at anyone, do not open your eyes, and do not move. That was the consciousness before the election. Mm. And so, I don't know if that had some subconscious, spill off into how I think about things and how I view things. But if you want me to reflect more deeply on my upbringing and significant events, that was one significant event that I don't think I'll ever forget. And how scared people were for the first time that I'd seen, and how drastically things have changed since then.
And this is how my mind works. I mean, my takeaway from that particular story, that even though the thread woven within that experience is fear, what I get from that is a community spirit. Is that the community came out as activists, the men of the community, to protect. And here you are today, running for city council. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Running for city council.
Congratulate me on September 12th on election day.
Here you are running for city council, and I presume you're going to tell us here tonight that one of your mandates is to protect, empower your community. You want to expand on that? Why are you running? Tell us why.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the role of people, and I don't want to downplay the role of women and the role women have played in my life. Certainly the most inspirational and hardworking person, barring any gender, is my mother. My mother's actually working right now. And so, when I described that night and the men going out and being vigilantes, the women were doing incredible work at the house as well, barricading windows and doors. And so my mother has always been the foundation in my life when I think about what I want to do and the kind of work ethic I want to have and the kind of things I want to achieve for myself and for my community. Why am I running? This is simple. I don't see myself as some career politician. I don't think I'm going to be running to go from one office to another office. I'll describe the situation very, clearly in black and white. I'm running for a position where the person who is in office right now, we call them the incumbent, has been stripped of all his powers for 6 years now, and he hasn't been able to do anything in my neighborhood. He hasn't been able to fund any organizations. We have 51 districts in New York City. In District 28, where I'm running, this council member hasn't been able to allocate any funding to the organizations that operate there. You know what that means? That means that everyone else in New York City is spending our money. Because it doesn't mean the money stopped going out, right? It just means other people are using it. In that time, the homeless rate in the city skyrocketed. And in my district, you're seeing an overconcentration of homeless shelters overnight. While this guy's absent, he has the lowest attendance rate on the city council. Very quickly, you realize that somebody's just collecting a check, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're in the ground and you're in the trenches, you understand this in a real way. You realize that it's not just funding, right? What it means is, I ran a neighborhood organization where I mentored and tutored kids. It means that there are less tutoring hours. It means that there are less mentoring hours. And what that impact is? In a neighborhood in Southeast Queens that has a less than 50% dropout rate, where 1 out of 2 kids does not actually finish high school, a lot of them are like you and me, Guyanese kids, not finishing high school, right? They're probably going to have a generation of kids that are less educated than even their parents. Because a lot of Guyanese people, certainly my mother's generation, have at least a high school degree. And so when I think about why I'm running, it's not because I have some political aspirations that go beyond this. I look at the situation black and white. I can do a better job than the person who is in there right now, and that's why I'm running to be elected. And that's why I think I will be elected on September 12th.
Well, let me ask you this. Vice President at NYC Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah.
Executive Director at the NYC Department of Consumer Affairs.
That's right.
Where you oversaw a citywide campaign to lower the cost of public transportation for working families. And you're currently Chief of Staff at a child welfare agency.
Yeah.
Protecting the most vulnerable kids and so on. Well, how have these experiences, these offices, help to motivate you or inspire you to do what you to run for city council?
It's not that they motivated or inspired me to run. They've given me tools to think and to know that I'll be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Look, government is like any other industry, right? If you want to be a doctor, you go to the med school and you practice and you become really good at it. If you want to be a plumber or an electrician, you do the same thing. In government, right, you can get in there and you can be like Donald Trump and make a total mess, right? Because you have no experience with government. You just have this ideology that it should be smaller, it should be this, or it should be that. I have 10 years of government experience where I have developed skill sets to make government work for my district. It's a simple message. I'm now ready to deploy those skill sets and that knowledge to benefit the residents of my neighborhood.
As you look at the political landscape, what is one particular skill set that resonates with you in a way that you realize, if I did not have this, I would be wasting my time running for city council?
One skill set.
One particular one. I mean, I'm sure there are many. What is one particular one that keeps resonating with you?
I keep, when I think about this, we have an incredibly diverse district, right? We have African Americans, we have West Indians, we have Latinos, we have people from India, like from India, not like me, like they just got here, right? And I think, and I seem to have an ability to bring diverse groups of people together to solve our common challenges. Now, I can talk about like analytical skills when it comes to funding, or more tangible skills when it talks about writing legislation and those kinds of things. At the end of the day, though, if you're not able to bring people together, especially people who have different values, who have different backgrounds, to work together on a common goal, what are you doing, right? Why are you running for office? I'm running for office because I think I can bring a diverse group of people to solve our common challenges together.
If you were to be elected, and the only reason this evening I am using the word if because I like to use when, I'm an optimist, is because you keep insisting that I do. So, if you're elected, what are your top 3 main priorities?
And I'll explain why I say if. Look,
give me the priorities. Give me the priorities.
The priorities.
Go to the if. Yes.
Okay. My top priority is going to be getting funding in education back. We want to see that our schools are adequately funded and parents are engaged in our school system. Okay. I want to see that our vital commercial districts are rebuilt. Right now, if you drive down Sutphin Boulevard, Guy Brewer, if you drive down Liberty Avenue, you'll know it's a total mess. Small businesses are struggling. That's going to be a really important topic of mine. The third thing that I'm going to focus on is how do we help homeowners? I live in a district where a lot of people own their own homes. They own their own co-ops. All we are seeing is taxes going up, up, up. We're not seeing any benefits of that. We're not seeing increased services. We're not seeing community centers or senior centers or veterans programs. All we're seeing is more taxes and everybody else thinking of how to spend our tax money for their own betterment, right? And so I'm going to be working with homeowners who pay more taxes than anyone else in New York City to talk about how do we get more of those tax dollars back into my district. I want to bring more resources here so that we can benefit our seniors, so we can benefit young people, they have a place to go after school, and that we can help veterans and women. This is why I'm running. Those are my top 3 issues.
Veterans and women. Why are veterans important to you?
Veterans are important to me because they're a very large voting bloc in the district. I don't have a history of being in the military. I don't have a history of, you know, of working with veterans. But veterans are a large constituency group in this neighborhood, and I have I have a lot of friends who are veterans. I have a lot of family members who are veterans, and I know that the issues that they face are unlike other New Yorkers. The series of challenges they face, and because they're such a big part of the district, we can't look past them.
Richard, I can't help but notice just now that when you spoke about education, the inflection in your voice, and I could see the passion.
I'll relax. I'll relax.
No, it's okay. I'm just telling you that what I noticed, the passion in you about education. Why does this drive you so much? What is it about education?
You know, so I have a master's from New York University, and I tell people this all the time, right? That doesn't matter, right? It doesn't make me more prepared for this job. It doesn't make me more qualified. And the reality is we want kids to go to college because chances are they'll do better.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of kids in our district, in our neighborhood, don't want to go to college, and that's fine. My brother didn't, right? And he still doesn't. And we need to be thinking about how we're creating an education environment that works with all different kids and their interests, right? We got to think of some kids don't even want to go to, they just want to do coding. They just want to create games. And guess what? If they did that, they'd probably be a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need, you know, this NYU fancy degree. Those are the kinds of things that we have to help young people channel. Artistic talents. Right now we have an education system that's just so built around standardized testing and parents being totally absent from the equation that a lot of kids are just not showing up. A lot of kids are not making it. And I want to see that every kid in our district has more fun. And let's not fool ourselves, right? There's racism here. That's what this is. Because you go 10 minutes north and the skin color gets a little paler and the funding doubles, right? And then you go south and the dividing line I'm talking about here is Hillside. You go a little south and all of a sudden you have a drop in attendance rates, you have a drop in parent participation. So we can't blame other people, right? We got to take a little blame ourselves. I care a lot about education because I know how it can impact the rest of your life and families. It's the biggest stabilizing force. I mean, the other thing is when people, when families think about where they're going to raise their kids, they're going to think about where they're going to send them to school. If they can't send them to school in their own neighborhood, guess what? They're moving. They're leaving. They're not going to stay there. We need our residents who work hard to stay in our neighborhood.
Your years of experience in government.
People are looking at me like he's so young. What years of experience?
Your years of experience in government and the various skills that you have developed. That's it. Someone looking at you tonight and say, I'm not sure who they were going to vote for. What is one other thing that you would like to say to your constituents that you bring to the table that can make a difference?
Yeah. So we've talked about education.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about skill sets and 10 years of experience in government. The reality of this though is that you've billed your show it would be a historic occasion where a Guyanese is elected to represent all of us in City Hall in New York City, and in a lot of ways, I tried not to have that label because it's not. Because then I worry that it'll alienate people who aren't Guyanese, right? That's how this works. But you have to think about it, right? Guyanese are the second largest immigrant group in all of Queens, right? Guyanese are the second largest immigrant group. So it's not, Mexico or somewhere, or Dominican Republic even. But we have no representation at the city council, where we have our largest numbers, right? So how do we change that? How do we make our issues at the center of this administration? We're immigrants, right? When the city thinks about immigrants, it thinks about language, right? It thinks about what foreign language are we going to translate materials in, because that's how we access immigrant communities. But guess what? Guyanese speak English, and so we get left out, right? Don't we? When the city and the administration thinks about framing immigration policies and resources, guess what? They're not thinking of African immigrants or people of African origin who are immigrants in New York City. They're not. They're thinking of everyone else. And so the moment we decide that we're going to put our own agenda first and that we're going to drive this agenda with bringing everyone else together, because this is a shared fight. We can do this. And I think that's what I bring to the table, and we're going to win. Now, the elephant in the room sometimes is like, he's Indian. Yeah, there are no Indian people either in the city council, and I'm really proud of my heritage. You know, yesterday we celebrated 100 years since we got our freedom, the end of indentureship. I'm incredibly proud of that. And I want to make sure that those kinds of things that my family care about, you know, Diwali is a public school holiday, having halal schools in lunches for public school kids, making sure that those things get more attention. That's why we have to have a voice in the city, in government.
I wonder if it is fair to ask you this question.
If you have to wonder, don't.
You mentioned education. It's important to you, veterans and women, home ownership, and so on. Which is closest to your heart?
Which is closest to my heart? I've worked a lot with young people, and even talking about politics with young people, it's like a taboo topic.
Mm.
I want to help young people in a lot of different ways, but I want to also make politics not a bad word. The more we say that politics is a bad thing, guess what? All the good people leave. And if all the good people leave, who do you leave in this, right? It's the people that we don't want. And so the more we normalize politics, especially among young people, we will develop a generation of leaders that will change our neighborhood and change our country. And that's what we have to fight for. That's what we have to push.
Let's take a break.